Hi guys, James here from Wiggle, and today we have the new Polar Vantage V2 watch. We're going to go over all the main key features that the watch has to offer. So the Polar Vantage V2 is obviously the new version to the original Vantage. Initially it looks really similar to the original watch, but if you look slightly closer you can tell it has a much more premium finish. Not only does this give the watch a really nice finish, but Polar actually say that this gives a boost to the GPS signal in the watch as well too. So as before in the Vantage range, the Vantage 2 features the classic 5-button system. Not only can you navigate your way around the watch with the buttons, but it also has a full touchscreen unit. You can almost navigate your way around the watch using either or, so just the buttons or just the touchscreen. But one thing I did notice is that when you're wearing this in the shower, the hot water actually changes the functions on the screen. A nice easy way to fix this is just if you hold down the top right hand button here, it just puts the watch into lock mode. So that just makes for a nice easy workaround. The lock functionality is also really beneficial when in an activity, so you can't accidentally stop your recording. Another thing I really like about the design of the watch, which you may not think about initially, is the fact that the aluminium backing actually has a round finish to the edge here. And I think this is really good for a few reasons actually. So when you're actually wearing the watch during an activity, let's say riding a bike would be a really good example, it just lets you have that extra flexibility in your wrist without any sharp corners of the watch digging into either the back of your hand or the back of your arm here. So it's just a really comfortable watch to wear with loads of movement. The other bonus to this is the heart rate monitor is obviously right in the center of the back of the watch there. So it's always going to have a really planted solid connection with your wrist, so it's going to give you optimum heart rate data. Speaking of heart rate monitors, this has Polar's Precision Prime heart rate monitor, which is a new one over the original Vantage. This has a new algorithm, so it's actually going to give you better heart rate data all throughout the day as well as during your activities. So it's going to just give you more accurate training data, which is a really nice touch. So as well as these hardware feature upgrades in the Vantage 2, there is a lot of software upgrades that are really beneficial to the V2 over the V1. So one of the features I really like when first booting the watch up is the fact that you can, quite similar to widget glances that Garmin have, is that you can just swipe through different screens, and this is going to get you to all the key features of the watch really quickly, as well as really help with your training load and where you are in your week's training. So if you want to check up on your weekly training, it will actually give you a really nice training screen here which shows you your activities during the week. Unfortunately for me it's only Monday, but one of the nice features is that if you haven't done any training in the new week, it's actually going to show you all the training that you did last week, so it's not just going to show you zero data, which I suppose could be quite depressing. You can click on this screen and it shows you the total of everything that you've done over the week, which is a really nice touch. It also breaks down all the individual activities as well, so you can look at all the training that you've done over the last week as well. When looking at these individual activities, it's amazing how much data you can get directly through the watch face. So here's some data from a short bike ride I did last week, and it breaks down the heart rate zones that you've been in, the energy used throughout the activity, and that goes down into the detail of carbs, protein and fat, which is pretty impressive. The average and top speeds, the altitude, as well as the new hill splitter mode, which I think is a really nice new feature. Basically what this hill splitter mode does is breaks down every single climb and descent that you've done into tiny little sections, similar to the sort of sections that you'd have on Strava really, and it just lets you break down all of the climbing and descending data so you can see how well you're doing. Another new feature on the Vantage 2 is Fuelwise. I think this is going to be a huge benefit to those endurance athletes, and it's certainly something that's going to help me because I'm pretty dreadful at it. Basically what this does, it allows you to create a fueling program for your activities. So your body's always going to be running at that perfect fuel amount. You can really get this dialed down to how your body performs best and how you like to consume in an activity. It lets you set a reminder for carbs intake as well as hydration. So all you have to do is estimate the length and intensity of your activity. You can choose how often you want to consume these, and then it will basically create a fueling strategy for you. It's also clever enough to adapt how you're doing in the activity as well. So if the activity becomes more intense than you expected, the watch will work that out and then give you more fuel for that. I know when I'm out on a ride, I certainly don't drink enough as well as probably eat enough either, so this is going to be a really helpful feature. Polar have also introduced a new power saver mode similar to the power manager mode from Garmin. This basically just lets you fine tune some of the settings in the watch so you can change the intensity of the GPS and the heart rate monitor. So basically this is just going to let you dial down some of those settings to increase the battery life in the watch. So it's really good for someone that's going to be using this for multi-day events or someone that's going to be using this for really long endurance activities. Having said that though, I don't think many of us will need to tone any of the settings down, because even on its highest settings, so the most battery consuming mode, it can still record really accurate GPS for up to 40 hours. So I think that's going to have most of us fairly covered. But for the few people that are going to need that extreme long battery life, you can tweak the settings and get actually up to 100 hours use out of it, which is fairly ridiculous. So when using the watch in general smartwatch mode with continuous heart rate tracking on, it's going to last you for a good solid 7 days. So with a few training sessions and the day-to-day tracking modes on, you're probably going to get the watch to last for about 5 days without having to recharge it. So another really nice new feature to the Vantage 2 is the performance tests. So it features a leg recovery test, a cycling test, a running test, as well as a general fitness test, as well as the orthostatic test that was available on the original Vantage. Sometimes when you have all these new features in the watch, it can just be a bit mind-blowing and you never get around to using them. But what makes these really nice is that when you actually click into each test, you can scroll down and there's a how-to, so it tells you exactly how to do them. They obviously give you some really interesting data on how well you're training. So for example, the running test actually gives you a fairly accurate VO2 estimate, as well as being able to obviously compare how well you've done on your previous test efforts. In a very similar light, you have a cycling test, and that's going to give you your FTP. Basically all you need for this is a connection to a power meter, so the watch obviously connects to a power meter, which is again a really nice touch. This test can obviously be done outdoors, but due to the variable conditions outdoors with traffic and lights, for example, it's a much better idea to try and do this test on an indoor smart trainer. Another new feature that I really enjoy, and is quite a fun one, is the leg recovery test. This is just a really simple concept that actually works really well. So basically with the watch on your wrist, you put your hands on your hips and jump as high as you can, and it actually measures how long you've been off the ground and how high you've jumped. It gives you 3 warm-up jumps and then averages it over the next 3 jumps that you do. And then just from that, it can actually tell you the condition that your legs are in. Not only is it just a fun piece of information to have, but the watch actually takes that data on board and actually adapts the future workouts to suit the condition of your legs for the oncoming week. One of the features I'm a really big fan of with new smartwatches these days is the sleep tracking. The Vantage 2 does this really well, and it's really easy to access via swiping through one of the glance views. You can then click on it to get a really detailed analysis of your night's sleep. Initially it just gives you a highlight view of how well you slept, and then you can scroll down into the detail. So you can open up the ANS details. It tells you how well you've slept compared to usual, your heart rate average compared to the average of the month, the beat to beat interval, the heart rate variability, and then quite interestingly the breathing rate average as well. Then we can go back and scroll down to sleep details. It tells you your sleep charge, how long you've been asleep compared to usual, and loads more data like actual sleep, continuity, interruptions, all the sleep cycles that you've been through. For example, resting eye movement, deep sleep, light sleep, and the interruptions that you've had. So being a multi-sport GPS watch, this can track you in a whole realm of different activities. If you just hold down the red button, it opens up the tracking mode. And then again, you can either swipe with your finger or use the scrolling buttons to see the different activities that it can track you in. So all in all, this watch is an incredible activity tracking device, and it's going to give you a really good training plan to get to that next level. And I think the new aluminium case, as well as boosting GPS signal, makes it look really premium too, even though I managed to scratch it on a pretty big spill on my mountain bike. Let us know what you think to the new V2 in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.